Hi everyone. Tomorrow Baba Ramdev is going to start the fast unto death that he has been talking about since January, when he first began his roadshow, talking to people across the country, street meetings, big rallies, where he's been trying to raise awareness about corruption, specifically black money. As unsettling and disturbing as this entire spectacle is, I think it's very important that we look at four aspects of what is going on. The first is the tool itself to gain attention. The second is the nature of the messenger. Third is the nature of the message itself. And fourth is the response of the government and ourselves to this entire situation. I want to deal with the tool of protest that he's using. There's been a lot of debate whether fasting unto death is a legitimate tool in a democracy. I would say, regardless of who uses it, it is a legitimate tool, and no matter how disturbed we are with the message it brings, it is a process by which citizens must be allowed to bring attention to their grievances. What makes this so disproportionate is the media attention to it. Sharmila Rome has been on a fast for 10 years. Just a week ago, Medha Patkar was on a fast for 7-8 days, protesting the way slum rehabilitation was being done in Bombay, but no attention was given to it. So, you know, as long as our institutional democracy remains unresponsive to citizens' needs, people will use imaginative means to get attention to themselves. And as much as one is uncomfortable with Baba Ramdev, one would defend his right to use whatever non-violent means of protest that is at one's disposal. Coming to the persona of Baba Ramdev himself is a completely different question. He is an exceptional yoga practitioner, but everything else about him is very disturbing. He's regressive in many of his stances. He's anti-homosexuality. He believes in the death penalty for a host of issues. He sits at the head of a massive empire, you know, which he has not made transparent, the means of it. You know, he's not audited it. The very optics of somebody coming on a chartered flight to sit on what is being termed as a Gandhian fast, that pretty much sums it up. Also the fact that his crusade against corruption is massively supported by the RSS organizationally and by the Sangh Parivar gives it a tonality and a color that makes it uncomfortable. Is this really a crusade against corruption, or is this a crusade to undermine this particular government and make a space for another government to come into being, which is not illegitimate, but gives it a different tonality altogether. Having said that, we need to look at the message per se. There is a lot of naivete to what he's demanding, that the Indian rupee should be equivalent to $50, that 500 rupee notes and 1,000 rupee notes should be pulled out of circulation. The specificities of it are, as I said, naive and embarrassing. But it would be a mistake not to give credence to the mood that he has tapped into, the public frustration with corruption, and one has to give that a kind of proportionate response. For too long, corruption has been something that both the citizenry as well as governments have taken to be a way of life in India. It's heartening that it has become an issue. Even as we say that, what is uncomplex about it is that the belief that you can root corruption out of society by passing a law, by asking for more centralized institutions, is a kind of hubris. A man like Baba Ramdev, who engages with society at large, should have been pushing for a kind of internal transformation, for an awakening in society, for decentralized way of curbing corruption, of putting power back in the hands of the people, the right to ask questions. Instead, what they're repeatedly pushing for are the very kinds of legislations and institutions that have repeatedly failed us. So the question arises that what is the way that governments and people can respond? How are we going to channel the huge mood that the Anna Hazare movement as well as the Baba Ramdev movement have tapped into? As ludicrous as they are, they have tapped into a very genuine public mood. The challenge of the government was to respond to that. Instead, the government's response has been ill thought out, stupid, and one that has just jumped at capitulation. It really sums up the fact that the governments have failed to be responsive as they must be in a democracy before something becomes a spectacle. This particular roadshow, Baba Ramdev's roadshow, has been on since January. Is it possible that the government didn't know about it? He's been holding dozens and dozens of street meetings, massive rallies, where he has been talking about this black money issue again and again. A democratic government would have been quick on its feet, would have ushered in a man with a large following like this and held a dialogue much earlier. It is something that they fail to do again and again, whether it is with tribal unrest, whether it is with the Telangana unrest, whether it is with insurgent movements. The message to take from this is that why do democratically elected governments not respond to genuine issues and to people's grievances until they become a spectacle and until responding to them smacks of capitulation and myopic short-term knee-jerk reactions, which is what the sight of 4 cabinet ministers going to the airport was. It was a humiliating moment in Indian democracy rather than a scene where we were seeing governments being responsive to a situation. As far as the media goes, I think there are a lot of lessons that we must take from this and a lot of questions that we must ask of what is going on. Even as we disdain a lot of the theatrics, a lot of the naivete and ludicrousness of both Baba Ramdev's persona and what he demands, we must bring proportion back to this debate and ask the questions that even as they use this to bring grievance to the table, is this the correct way of brokering legislations? I would say no. Legislations must be through reasoned debate. It cannot be done through holding something to ransom. You can blackmail a government, you can hold a government to ransom to bring a grievance onto the table. But the specificities of that and of how laws are passed must be through reasoned debate. That is one point I'd like to raise. The other point is the media's attention. With our attention, we tend to blow ants into elephants and we ignore a lot of important issues in the country which just fall away and simmer into worse resentments because we do not give it our attention. So all of this spectacle can be seen as a kind of creative blowback, because if this did not happen, there would have been a status quo. So as much discomfort as it arouses, my own assessment would be that it is part of a creative blowback, it is part of a creative turmoil that if we take our right lessons from it, will perhaps yet deliver us into a better and a more responsive democratic society. Thanks for listening in.